Hey there, everybody. Looks like I'm not live on LinkedIn for whatever reason here, so apologize about that. But I wanted to just share with you for a minute a breakthrough that I had last week. Now, I shared this in a group that I'm a part of. It's a private group, so you wouldn't have seen it, but it was profound enough and critical enough that I wanted to share it with you. And so, for context, just so you know a little bit more about me in case we've just met and you don't know my story, et cetera. But I'm a former professional musician. I lived and worked in Vegas. I toured. I been on albums, all that kind of stuff, and that was a major part of my life ever since I was a young little boy. And so I say all that to kind of preface this breakthrough with the fact that at one point in my life I was in love with the game. And in that example, in that case, for the majority of my life, I was in love with the game of music. I would practice, 5 hours a day, more than that sometimes, especially between individual practicing and being in different ensembles and groups and stuff like that. And during school, I would I'd have, a pencil, like I got a pencil here on my desk, and I'd be, practicing scales during class when I'm supposed to be learning English or math or other subjects. And so when I was driving, I would have so much going on in my head musically that I was almost driving on autopilot. Like, this wasn't when we had cell phones, right? Like we had beepers, and it was like at the onset of beeper, and my beeper didn't have a keyboard or anything. So I couldn't text or anything like that. So I'm just driving down the road, and I've got this stuff going on in my head, and I'm thinking through and practicing mentally. And so I stopped music, about 15 years ago or so now, and went full time into business, business that wasn't related to music in some way. So, because I've always had businesses, multiple streams of income, that sort of thing, but they were always music related. And so about 15 years ago, I stopped that and went into, non-music related business. And so that kind of brings me to now where I'm at. And over the past few years, and like 3 years or so, my wife would call it obsessed, but the reality is I just like to call it deeply focused. That's probably denial, but that's okay. So we'll call it obsessed for everybody to make my wife happy. And she would say that I was obsessed with our goals, that I was obsessed with our desired outcomes. And yes, I was obsessed with our clients and the impact we were having on them and the success that they were having and the impact that they were having on and off the field. So I've been obsessed with that next thing, that result, so to speak. And so I had made getting to that next place, I had made that my standard. Whereas what needed to happen was I needed to be in love with the game of business, just like I was in love with the game of music. And that's not to say I don't, or I didn't love biz, because I did love biz, and I absolutely do currently love business. But especially if you're married or you've dated anybody throughout your life, that you can love something or you can love someone without being in love with that something or in love with that someone. And so my breakthrough is this, that I have to be in love with this game of building my business. I have to be in love with this game of changing our life, in love with this game of impacting our world. And if I'm not in love with those processes, if I'm not in love with, back in the day of music, of practicing, if I'm not actually in love with that standard of practicing, if I'm not in love with that standard of building my business and changing my life and impacting my world and helping others do the same thing, and if I'm merely chasing desired outcomes, that will never, ever be enough. And I think a good example that we see of this is with celebrities today, right? And not just celebrities, but you see it with prominent business people, right? You'll see people taking photos with their rented private jets, or some of them do own their private jets, but they've made it about those things. They've made it about the lifestyle. They've made it about getting to that next place of spending their money to buy happiness, to buy contentment, and so forth. And they haven't made it about being in love with the game. So what I'm learning and relearning is that I have to be in love with all those things. I have to be in love with building my business, changing my life, impacting my world. And if I'm in love with the game, if I'm in love with practicing business, then all those other things, the outcomes that we're seeking, the milestones that we want to hit, those things that we're chasing are naturally going to occur if we are in love with the game. So that is my challenge to you here. We've got just a few weeks left in the month of December, and I want to challenge you to be in love with growing your business. I want to challenge you to be in love with creating your customer craze effect. And the customer craze effect, if you're not familiar with that, it's where customers are crazy for you and not crazy for using somebody else. So if you'd like more details about that, just let me know. If you need some accountability on being in love with your business, if you want to fall back in love with growing your business and changing your life and having an impact on your world, again, however big or small that is, whether that's your team members, whether that's the people around your kitchen table, what maybe that's the world at large. But if you want some accountability, want some help with that, then just let me know in the comments. So I hope this was beneficial to you and that you are reminded ever so gently, but proddingly enough, that you have to be in love with the process and not in love with the outcome or the milestone. And so the title down here is For the Love of the Game. And there was a Michael Jordan book written 98, I think it was a book he wrote called For the Love of the Game. And so that's my challenge here to you, is fall in love with the game. And if you want help with that, just let me know.